He was once the man everyone loved to watch. A familiar face on television, always smiling, always on the hunt for old treasures hidden in dusty barns and forgotten attics. Frank Fritz was not just a co-host on the popular show American Pickers, he was the heart of it. With his unique style, humor, and passion for antiques, people felt connected to him. He wasn't some polished Hollywood celebrity, he was real. Someone who spoke like us, laughed like us, and got excited over rusty old signs the way only true collectors do. But as quickly as he rose, he disappeared from the spotlight, quietly, without warning, and without explanation. For years, fans kept asking the same question: where is Frank? Why isn't he on the show anymore? Some thought it was a health issue, others blamed personal problems. There were rumors, theories, and even online petitions to bring him back. But no one really knew what had happened behind the scenes. Frank never spoke openly about it. And those who knew him, they stayed silent too. Time passed and the mystery only grew deeper. Occasionally, a blurry photo or small news update would pop up about Frank, mostly related to his health or legal troubles. But nothing major, nothing that explained the full story. It felt like he had just vanished into a private life, far away from the cameras and fans who once admired him. Until now. A recent discovery changed everything. It started quietly. No one expected the FBI to be involved. Not with Frank. He was just a former TV star, someone who collected vintage stuff and lived a quiet life. But something triggered their attention, something that led them straight to his private mansion. It wasn't some fancy Hollywood home. It was old, a bit worn down, and filled with antiques, much like the ones he used to pick on the show. But that house, it was hiding something. And soon the world would find out. When the FBI arrived, they weren't there for a casual visit. They had a mission. There were whispers about documents, possibly some evidence, or even tips from an unknown source. What exactly they were looking for wasn't clear at the time. But one thing was certain: something inside Frank's house had caught their eye. They moved slowly through the home, room by room, examining the items, the walls, and eventually the floors. It was during this search that they noticed something strange. In one of the older rooms, the floor seemed different, almost like it had been replaced or covered up. At first it looked like any other wooden floor, aged and dusty. But there was something off about it. Some sections didn't match. Some felt hollow, almost like they were hiding something underneath. So they started removing the old floorboards. What they found would shock even the most experienced agents. Underneath the floor, hidden away for years, was something no one could have imagined. It wasn't just a few forgotten antiques. It wasn't some secret stash of cash or personal items. It was something far darker. Something that changed the way people saw Frank Fritz. Now the question that once was "where is Frank?" turned into "what was Frank hiding?" And that's when the real mystery began. This part of the story is the beginning of something much bigger. It's not just about an old TV host or a few antiques. It's about secrets buried in silence. A man who lived in front of millions, yet managed to hide something so deep, so shocking, that even the FBI was left speechless. What was under that floor? Why was it hidden? And did Frank know about it all along? As the news spread, people started digging back into Frank's past, his sudden exit from the show, his legal troubles, his health struggles. Was it all connected somehow? Had there been signs all along that we missed? Or was Frank himself a victim of something he couldn't control? These are the questions people are asking. And the answers, they're still unfolding. But one thing is clear now. Frank Fritz's story is not over. In fact, it might just be beginning. Most people never saw the inside of Frank Fritz's mansion. From the outside, it looked like any other old house tucked away on a quiet road. It wasn't flashy. There were no tall gates or shiny cars in the driveway. Just a worn-out path, a few trees, and a house that had stories hiding in its walls. To someone passing by, it was just another old home. But those who knew Frank, even a little, knew that this house wasn't ordinary. This was the place where he stored not just antiques, but pieces of his life. Frank had always been passionate about collecting. On his show, he would travel across the country, looking for forgotten things from the past. Motorcycles, signs, toys, oil cans, you name it. If it had history, Frank wanted it. And it wasn't just for the cameras. That love for old things was real. It was who he was. So when he finally settled into this mansion, it became a kind of museum. Every room had a story. Every shelf had something unique. And every corner held something from another time. But the house also reflected something else, something deeper. Over the years, as Frank's personal life became more difficult, the house began to change. It wasn't the clean, organized place it once was. Some rooms were cluttered, others were left untouched for months. Curtains stayed closed, lights were dim. It was as if the house had started to carry Frank's pain, his isolation, his silence. Neighbors rarely saw him. The once friendly man who used to chat with fans or invite people to see his collections now kept to himself. Some said he was battling health issues. Others believed he was hiding from something or someone. The truth was, nobody really knew what went on inside that mansion. But one thing was certain, something didn't feel right. There were whispers. Strange things people said they heard or saw. Some claimed they noticed unusual activity at night. People coming and going, lights flickering, doors opening and closing when no one was supposed to be there. Of course, nothing was ever proven. But in a small town, stories spread fast. And when someone like Frank Fritz disappears from public life, people start to talk. The mansion itself was large but old. It had been built decades ago, long before Frank bought it. It had thick wooden doors, creaky floors, and long hallways that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were lined with old photographs, vintage signs, and strange-looking items most people couldn't even name. The basement, according to some, was never shown to guests. Locked most of the time. The attic, filled with dust and covered furniture, was also said to hold things even Frank hadn't touched in years. What made the house so mysterious wasn't just the way it looked. It was the way it felt. People who had been inside, even briefly, described a strange atmosphere. A heaviness. Like the house itself was holding its breath. As if it had secrets it didn't want to share. One visitor said it felt like being watched, even when no one else was there. Another said she heard footsteps upstairs, even though Frank was downstairs the whole time. Whether those stories were true or just rumors, no one could say. But they added to the mystery. And when the FBI showed up at Frank's mansion, those old stories didn't seem so crazy anymore. Now people were asking, what was hidden in that house all along? The FBI wasn't interested in the antiques. They didn't care about the signs or motorcycles. They were looking for something specific. Something they believed was hidden inside that house. At first they searched the obvious places, the drawers, the closets, the cabinets. But then, they started focusing on the structure itself. The walls, the ceiling, and finally the floor. One particular room stood out. It was smaller than the others, and strangely quiet. There was barely any furniture in it, just a table and a few old boxes. But something about the floor caught their attention. It looked newer than the rest of the house. Like it had been replaced recently. Or covered up. The wood didn't match the other rooms. When they stepped on it, there was a slight echo, like there was empty space underneath. Curiosity turned into suspicion. And suspicion led to action. They began removing the floorboards, one by one. What they expected to find, nobody knows. But what they actually discovered would leave even the most experienced agents in shock. This wasn't just about Frank Fritz anymore. This was about what had been hiding beneath his feet for years. A secret that even his closest friends didn't know. Something that would change how people saw him forever. As the investigation continued, the mansion that once represented Frank's love for history now became part of history itself. A crime scene. A puzzle. A place filled with more questions than answers, and somewhere behind all of it was a man who once brought joy to millions of viewers. A man who now lived in silence, while the world searched for the truth inside the very walls he once called home. No one knows what else that house might be hiding. But one thing is sure, the mansion wasn't just a home. It was a mystery waiting to be unlocked. It all started on a quiet morning. No one expected anything strange to happen. The street outside Frank Fritz's house was calm like always, but something was different this time. A few black cars pulled up slowly in front of the mansion. The engines were turned off. The doors opened quietly. Men in dark suits stepped out, their expressions serious, their movements careful. They didn't look around or speak much. They knew exactly why they were there. It was the FBI. People in the neighborhood had never seen anything like this before. Frank's house had always been a place of mystery, but no one thought it would become part of a real investigation. Yet here it was, with federal agents at the door, holding documents and tools ready to begin their search. At first people thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe they had the wrong house, or maybe they were just there to ask questions. But as time passed, it became clear this was not a simple visit. The FBI was there with a purpose, and that purpose was hidden somewhere inside Frank's mansion. Some reports said the agents had received a tip. No one knows who gave it, or what exactly it said. But whatever it was serious enough to send agents directly to his door. They had a warrant, meaning they had permission from a court to search the property. They believed something important was inside, something that needed to be found. The agents walked through the house slowly, carefully. They looked at everything. They took photos. They made notes. They opened cabinets, pulled out drawers, and checked behind furniture. Each room had its own feel, filled with old signs, vintage toys, rusty tools, and strange machines. It was like stepping into another world, one built completely by Frank's hands. But they weren't there for antiques. They weren't impressed by the rare items or the history behind them. They were looking for something hidden, something that had been kept secret for a long time, something that didn't belong in plain sight. Then they found the room. It was smaller than the others. The walls were plain, the light dim. There wasn't much inside, just a few boxes, a dusty table, and an old chair. But the floor looked different. The wood was newer. The color didn't match the rest of the house. One agent bent down and knocked on it. The sound was hollow. Something was underneath. They looked at each other and one of them gave a small nod. They had found something. The next few minutes were quiet but intense. Tools were brought in. Boards were carefully lifted. Dust rose into the air. Each piece of wood removed brought them closer to the truth. No one spoke. Everyone watched. What would they find below this strange part of the floor? And then they saw it. No one has said exactly what it was. The FBI has kept most of the details hidden from the public. But witnesses say that the moment the floor opened, everything changed. The agents stopped moving for a second. Their faces turned pale. Some of them whispered. One agent even stepped back, clearly shocked by what he saw. Whatever was down there, it wasn't just old junk. It wasn't something that could be explained away easily. It was serious. It was dark. And it had been hidden for a long time. Was it a secret room, a hidden storage area, or something worse? Some say there were strange documents. Others believe illegal items were found. A few even talk about things too disturbing to mention. But no one knows for sure, except the agents who were there. And they're not talking. News of the FBI raid spread quickly. Reporters showed up outside. Cameras flashed. Drones flew over the house. The whole country wanted to know, what did the FBI find inside Frank Fritz's home? People who had once been fans were now full of questions. Had Frank known about what was under the floor? Was he hiding it on purpose? Or was he just another victim of something bigger, something darker? As all this unfolded, Frank remained silent. He didn't speak to the media. He didn't post anything online. No statements, no interviews. It was like he had disappeared again, just like he did after leaving the show. Only this time the silence felt heavier, more mysterious, more frightening. The house, once a symbol of Frank's passion and personality, had become something else. It was now a place of investigation, a place full of secrets. The floors that once creaked under his feet were now part of a federal case. And the big question still remained. What exactly had the FBI been looking for? Was it linked to something from Frank's past? Was someone else involved? Was this all part of something much bigger than anyone expected? No one knew for sure, but one thing was clear. The story was far from over. As agents continued their work inside the mansion, more details started to surface. Tiny pieces of information that only made the mystery deeper. The public was left guessing, watching, waiting. Because when the FBI shows up and finds something so shocking, it leaves them speechless. It's never just a small matter. It's the beginning of something much, much bigger. And Frank Fritz's story had just taken a turn no one saw coming. The news about the FBI raid spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, it was all over the internet. Social media platforms were flooded with questions. People wanted answers, but no one was giving them. The house was sealed. The street was blocked. Reporters stood outside with cameras, waiting for someone to speak. But all they got was silence. Everyone wanted to know what the FBI found under Frank Fritz's floor. What had shocked them so much that even experienced agents looked disturbed? Why were they being so quiet about it? Rumors started flying. Some said they found illegal antiques. Others claimed it was something even worse. There were wild stories about strange old photographs, weird symbols, even hidden tunnels. But none of it was confirmed. The truth was still locked inside that house. And the only person who could possibly explain anything, Frank, was nowhere to be seen. People who knew him were being asked questions too. Old friends, former co-workers, neighbors. But most of them said the same thing: they hadn't seen or spoken to him in a long time. A few mentioned his health issues. Others said he had become more distant over the years. Some believed he had just wanted to be left alone. But now that silence felt suspicious. Was he hiding from something, or had something happened to him? The mansion, which once stood quietly at the edge of the street, had become the center of attention. News helicopters hovered above. Police cars came and went. Forensics teams entered the building, dressed in white suits, carrying boxes and tools. They spent hours inside, sometimes even the whole night. What were they looking for now? Was there more under the floor? As the investigation deepened, the house began to look less like a home, and more like a mystery box. Every object, every room, every inch of the structure was examined. And slowly new questions began to rise. Why had Frank never spoken about that part of the house? Was the floor built by him, or had it already been that way when he moved in? Had he found something and decided to cover it up? Or had someone else used his home for something without him even knowing? The possibilities were endless, and each one was darker than the last. Some people defended Frank. They said he had been through a lot. His exit from the show wasn't smooth. His health was declining. He had been struggling emotionally. Maybe he wasn't hiding anything. Maybe he didn't even know what was under that floor. Maybe someone had set him up. But others weren't so sure. They pointed out how private Frank had become, how he had slowly cut himself off from the world, how he stopped giving interviews, how he avoided questions about his past. Could someone like that really be innocent? Online forums and YouTube channels began creating full-length videos, analyzing every detail. People zoomed in on photos of the house. They tried to match furniture, signs, even old show clips, to find clues. One user claimed they saw a strange metal box in a background shot from years ago that might match the item taken by the FBI. Another said Frank once mentioned in an old interview that he had found something during a pic that he wasn't allowed to talk about. At the time, no one thought much of it, but now it felt like a warning. As the pressure built up, the authorities gave a short statement. They confirmed that something unusual had been discovered inside the house, but they refused to say what it was. They said the investigation was ongoing, and that more details would be shared when possible. That only made people more curious. What was so sensitive that they couldn't even describe it? Behind all of this stood Frank, still silent, no public appearance, no phone call, no social media post, nothing. Even his lawyer didn't say much. The silence became louder than words. Some fans started writing open letters to him, begging him to speak up, to tell his side of the story. Others simply waited, refreshing news websites every hour, hoping for a headline that might explain what was really happening. In the middle of this storm, one thing became very clear. Frank's life was no longer just his own. It had become part of a bigger puzzle. A puzzle with missing pieces, unclear edges, and a center that seemed darker than anyone expected. This wasn't just a story about an ex-TV star. It was now about secrets, hidden things, and questions no one had answers to. The house was no longer just a place full of antiques. It was a crime scene, a place holding something dangerous, and the world was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. People couldn't help but wonder, was this just the beginning? What if the thing they found under the floor was only one part of a much bigger secret? What if there were more places like this? More items, more people involved? And what about Frank? Was he scared, hiding, guilty, or completely unaware? No one knew for sure, and that's what made the mystery even more gripping. As days turned into weeks, the mansion remained quiet, but the world around it wasn't. News anchors debated theories, investigators looked deeper, and fans continued to hold their breath. Because somewhere under the dust and silence, the truth was waiting to be discovered. After days of complete silence, something finally changed. A new update came out, but not from the FBI. This time it was from someone who used to work closely with Frank years ago. He didn't reveal his name, but he agreed to talk to a reporter. His words added fuel to the fire and took the mystery to a whole new level. He said that Frank had once mentioned finding something he wasn't supposed to. It was a random conversation during one of their road trips for the show. At that time, the man thought Frank was joking or just trying to sound dramatic, but now after everything that happened with the FBI, those words felt very real. He said Frank didn't say much after that. He just looked out the window and stayed quiet for the rest of the ride. The moment had passed, but the feeling stayed. There was something hidden behind Frank's eyes that day. Something unspoken. This small story was enough to shake people. It wasn't proof of anything, but it felt like a clue. Maybe Frank really did discover something years ago and decided to keep it secret. But what could be so serious that it stayed hidden for this long? As more people came forward with small stories like this, a strange pattern started to appear. Frank had been acting differently for a long time. He would sometimes cancel meetings last minute. He became more private. He avoided certain questions, even with friends. Once during a fan meet, someone asked him what his rarest find was. Instead of answering like he usually did, he just smiled quietly and said, "Some things are better left buried." No one thought much of it back then, but now those words sounded almost like a warning. Meanwhile, the FBI was still silent, but actions speak louder than words. More specialists were seen going into the mansion, not just regular agents, experts in old documents, forensics, and even historians. That surprised everyone. Why would the FBI need historians unless something very old and very important was involved? One expert was spotted carrying a case that looked like it was made to hold ancient papers or fragile objects. People began to wonder, was this about a lost document, a hidden will, something from history that had gone missing? Inside the mansion, everything was being handled with care. Every object was bagged, labeled, and moved out of the house. They were building a case. But for what? Was Frank the target, or just a piece in a much larger puzzle? As theories grew, one video clip resurfaced online. It was an old episode of American Pickers where Frank visited a strange property in a small town. In that episode, he bought an old chest but told the cameras they couldn't film what was inside. He said it was personal. Some fans started linking that moment to the current events. Could that chest have held something important? Was it still in the mansion? Other people looked at old interviews. In one, Frank mentioned how he once came across a diary from the 1800s, written by a man who claimed to know secrets about famous missing treasures. At the time, it sounded like just another cool story. But now, fans were connecting dots that had been ignored for years. Outside Frank's home, the atmosphere had changed. Reporters were still there, but now so were curious fans. People brought signs that said, "We believe you, Frank, and tell us the truth." Some just stood silently, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But Frank still hadn't spoken. Not a word. His family hadn't released a statement either. His silence was like a heavy cloud over the entire mystery. One day, a local news reporter claimed she had spoken to someone inside the FBI. The source wasn't confirmed, but what she said was chilling. She claimed that something was found in the floor that wasn't supposed to exist. Not just rare or illegal, but impossible. Something so unexpected that the agents had to pause the search and call for higher-level clearance. This single statement sent the internet into a storm. What could be so impossible that even the FBI didn't know what to do with it? Some believed it was a historical artifact. Others thought it was proof of a long-hidden crime. The wildest theories included secret codes, maps to hidden places, or even involvement in a major cover-up. Of course, without any proof, it was all speculation. But in a case like this, even rumors sounded believable. People started looking back into Frank's past even more deeply. They pulled up records from auctions he attended. They studied the places he visited. They rewatched old episodes looking for anything that seemed unusual. One fan pointed out that Frank had once been very interested in a closed-down military facility near where he lived. At the time, it seemed like just curiosity. But now, people were asking, did he find something there that he shouldn't have? Still, the biggest question remained. Where was Frank now? Was he under protection? Was he hiding? Was he in some kind of danger? No one could say. And maybe that's what made everything feel so unsettling. The center of the storm, the man who once made millions smile with his love for antiques, had completely vanished. And in his place, all that was left were secrets. The FBI still hadn't released any official findings. They said the investigation was ongoing and sensitive. That meant it wasn't ending anytime soon. Whatever was happening inside that mansion was bigger than just one man's collection. And as days continued to pass, people began to wonder something new. What if the thing the FBI found wasn't just a hidden object? What if it was connected to something they had been looking for years? That idea alone was enough to send shivers down the spine of even the most logical people. Because when you think of a man who lived in silence, collected forgotten things, and hid something under his floor that could change everything, you can't help but ask one last question. What else was Frank hiding? Days turned into weeks, but no one forgot about Frank Fritz. The world was still waiting. Every day, more people joined online forums just to discuss his mansion, the FBI, and the mystery under the floor. Theories became longer, crazier, and deeper, but one question never went away. What did they really find? Then something strange happened. A person posted online, claiming they had received an anonymous package. Inside it was a small notebook, old and dusty, with FF written on the front. The person didn't share their name, but they uploaded photos of the pages. The handwriting looked shaky, almost rushed. There were notes, drawings, and strange details about an old object. One page said, "They'll come for it. I can't let them find everything." Another page had a rough map, showing a part of the mansion's basement with an X marked near the wall. No one knew if it was real. But it didn't matter. People believed it. Everyone was now convinced Frank had hidden something so rare, so dangerous, that even the FBI wasn't ready for it. The idea that he might have sent the notebook to someone, just before disappearing, made the whole thing feel even more intense. As the noise grew louder, the FBI finally broke their silence again. But instead of answering questions, they simply confirmed that they were expanding the investigation. They said this was now bigger than just one property. Bigger than one man. That sentence changed everything. Suddenly, Frank's mansion didn't feel like the end of a story. It felt like the beginning of a much bigger one. Reporters began digging into old property records. They discovered that Frank had quietly purchased 2 more buildings years ago. One was a rundown barn on the outskirts of town. The other was a small warehouse near the state border. Both places had been empty for years, but now they were surrounded by black vans and police tape. Inside the barn, investigators found antique crates filled with sealed boxes. Some had no labels. Others had dates that went back more than 100 years. What shocked everyone was that most of them were locked, and the keys were nowhere to be found. The warehouse was even more mysterious. The building had no windows. The doors were made of reinforced steel. When authorities finally opened it, they found something unexpected. A long underground tunnel had been dug beneath it, leading to a hidden room. Inside that room were shelves filled with files, books, and what looked like personal journals. Each journal had a year written on it, starting from 1998. That was the year Frank joined American Pickers. Suddenly, a new theory was born. What if Frank had been collecting more than just antiques? What if he had been collecting secrets? Secrets that connected powerful people, hidden history, and things never meant to be seen. It sounded unbelievable, but no one could deny the facts anymore. The FBI was now involved in multiple locations. They had set up teams just to analyze the papers. Even government historians were flown in. Something big was going on, and Frank was at the center of it. People began to question everything they thought they knew about him. Was Frank just a collector who got too curious? Or had he been part of something hidden all along? And if he was, then why did he go silent? That question became heavier each day. Some thought he had disappeared to protect himself. Others feared something worse had happened. The internet was full of theories, but not one clear answer. Then almost a month after the mansion raid, something happened that no one expected. A short video was uploaded to a private account. It didn't have a title. No face was shown. Just a voice. But people were quick to notice, it sounded exactly like Frank. In the video, the voice said, "If you're watching this, it means they found the floor. I don't know what they'll say about me. Maybe that I was crazy, maybe that I was a criminal. But I wasn't either. I just found something I couldn't unfind. And once you see it, you can't pretend it doesn't exist." The video lasted just under 1 minute, then went black. That was it. No more uploads. No explanation, but it was enough. Now there was no doubt left. Frank knew something, and whatever it was, it had scared him enough to go into hiding, or worse, to prepare for something bigger. The public now saw him differently. He was no longer just a former TV personality. He was someone who had been carrying a huge burden, possibly for years. Someone who had seen something that couldn't be ignored. Even people who didn't believe in conspiracies started to wonder. What did Frank really find? Was it something connected to history? Government secrets, a hidden crime, or something far beyond what anyone could imagine? To this day, no official report has revealed what was truly under that floor. The FBI never named any specific item. The journals found in the warehouse were never shown to the public. And Frank? He's still gone. No one knows where he is. Or if he's even alive. But one thing is clear. His mansion wasn't just a place where he kept antiques. It was a place that held secrets. Secrets so powerful that people in suits, people with badges, and people with deep knowledge had to step in. And it all started with a floor. A floor that should have been just wood and nails. But instead, it was a door. A door to the unknown. And once that door opened, there was no way to close it again.